Good evening, you're with India Matters on Thursday night. The Air India AI 171 crash preliminary probe report has left more questions than answers, and that's one of the reasons why so many people and so much of the Western press has been repeatedly calling this a pilot suicide case. Well, on tonight's show, you're going to see the angriest panel of reporters pointing an angry finger directly at those investigating this crash right here in India. Viewers, something deeply troubling is unfolding in the story of Air India Flight AI 171. A new report in the Wall Street Journal this morning has published new alleged details from the cockpit of the doomed 787 Dreamliner. The most explosive, that co-pilot Clive Kundar allegedly asked Captain Sabharwal why he had moved the fuel control switches from the run to the cutoff position, cutting fuel to both engines and destroying the aircraft. The same switch movement that is now believed to have precipitated the accident. Kundar, the pilot flying, reportedly expressed shock and panic. Sabharwal, the pilot monitoring, remained calm. This is what has been reported by the Wall Street Journal, and as you can imagine, it has triggered widespread shock and outrage, especially in the pilot community. If true, this is no longer just an accident, it is no longer a mystery, it potentially becomes a crime scene in the sky. And yet India's own Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, or AAIB, an agency entrusted with the truth, has woken up only now to call the Wall Street Journal story unverified, selective and irresponsible. Silence so far, allowing all this speculation to plant seeds of suspicion and doubt in the minds of millions of people across the world. Strange words from an organization that's released a preliminary report so vague and carefully worded, it's become a runway for speculation rather than a path to clarity. Let's be very blunt tonight. This is the same AAIB whose initial report left room open for interpretations of deliberate pilot action without stating it outright, conveniently allowing headlines to do the dirty work, only leaving one small tantalizing scrap of conversation, that too not in direct quotes. Now, under global scrutiny and domestic disbelief, it issues a statement after the narrative damage is done, after the truth has been stirred up. So we must now ask, was the ambiguity of the report by design? Is the system simply sluggish, or is it unprepared? Or is there a deeper interest in framing this tragedy as a clean case of human deliberate action and then simply moving on? Because if what the Wall Street Journal has reported is true, this isn't just about the pilots. It's about oversight, training, mental health, cockpit dynamics, and yes, potential culpability. The only way forward is full cockpit audio transparency, not selective leaks, not bureaucratic defensiveness, and certainly not post-facto outrage at international journalism. The lives lost on AI 171 and their families deserve the facts, and they deserve the truth. Let me now show you what the Wall Street Journal has reported that has created this entire wave of outrage. These are details that they've reported of that crucial cockpit conversation, which was left completely ambiguous in the preliminary probe report. The Wall Street Journal quotes unnamed officials as saying that it was co-pilot Clive Kundar who asked Captain Sumit Sabharwal why the latter had moved the switches to the cutoff position. The report says that co-pilot Kundar expressed surprise and panic in the cockpit, but that Captain Sabharwal remained completely calm. The report says Kundar was the pilot flying, so his hands were on the stick. Sabharwal was the pilot monitoring, so his hands were free. The insinuation is that his hands were free to move those switches to the cutoff position. The Wall Street Journal report also says that criminal authorities should review the matter as a potential crime rather than a safety mishap. The Indian government has called this news break one-sided, and as we now know, the AAIB has put out a detailed statement calling everything that the Wall Street Journal has reported as one-sided, unverified, and irresponsible. Now let me tell you what the Indian Express newspaper here in India has reported this morning, because this adds a completely different angle to what has been pushed so far by the Western media in terms of pilot suicide. This is a front page report which talks about how the probe is looking at the possible uncommanded transition of the fuel control switches. In other words, not pilot action, but uncommanded, some kind of mechanical failure which made those switches move by themselves. An electrical snag was logged hours before the AI-171 flight on that very same aircraft. This was not known before it was reported in this newspaper. Number two, the defect was logged in stabilizer position transducer. That is a sensor in the tail of the plane, the slag in the sensor that controls the aircraft's pitch, that it's the nose up-down movement. The snag can trigger incorrect flight control responses. It can even trigger unintended fuel cutoff signals, according to this Indian Express report. Two recent electrical snags led to flight cancellations of this very aircraft, AI Flight 171. One recent electrical snag was a false fuel system warning, and before that, there was another one as well. This is only to say that snags and electrical faults have been recorded on this aircraft. And in the wake of this front page story in the Wall Street Journal, I'm joined now by Mary F. Schiavo. She used to be the top aviation watchdog in the United States and has since done pioneering work as an aviation safety lawyer in the space of whistleblowers and aviation safety in general. Ms. Schiavo, welcome. Thanks for being with me here on NDTV. I'd like to begin by asking you for your views on this new Wall Street Journal article, which has added another layer of detail in its reportage of the AI-171 crash, where they've basically reported that the pilots did it, that one pilot switched those fuel control switches off and another was panicked and confused, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, well, first of all, as to panic and confusion, in the situation in which the pilots, were in, what they faced would cause certainly an alarm. They were able to respond and try to restart the engines, so they weren't so panicked that they could not act. But in any case where you have a highly computerized aircraft with a million lines of code doing something that both the pilot flying and pilot not flying both said they did not do the fuel cutoff. One pilot asked the other, did you cut off? The other said, no, I did not. So taking facts, and remember, that's all the preliminary report is, the facts that are known at the date they put that out at 30 days. They have a mystery, but a very terrifying and serious condition in the cockpit. At that point in takeoff, right when you reach 180 knots, your nose is supposed to be pointed up above the horizon and you're supposed to have full thrust to climb. All of a sudden you don't have full thrust and your plane levels off instead of being pointed up to climb. It's a very tough situation. The Wall Street Journal article is, I'm sorry to say, but it is just taking this preliminary report, which was very straightforward, does not blame the pilots, and runs afoul with it. There is no evidence in the preliminary report or anywhere that this was an intentional act by either pilot. There's certainly no evidence at this point of suicide or what would be mass murder. No way.
Is that a possibility, though, Ms. Schiavo? Is deliberate pilot action a possibility, or is that not at all a possibility in your view?
There's nothing that points to that at this point, especially since we've had a prior incident on a 787 Dreamliner that's very similar. Aldepon Airways back in 2019, the National Transportation Safety Board investigated it and found that the aircraft itself put the engines into fuel control cutoff because the plane mistakenly thought it was already on the ground. And so we already know that. So no, I don't think there's anything at this point to point to that. I have worked many, many crashes over the years. I've worked probably hundreds of cases. But I have worked several cases where pilot suicide, pilot murder was alleged or blamed. And in all cases where it turned out to be the case, there's evidence. There's evidence on the cockpit voice recording. There's other evidence outside. Here we see none of that, and we have to give the investigators, the AAIB, time to do their investigation. This investigation, this is hugely important. The first crash of a 787.
Yeah.
This investigation is not done in 30 days. This investigation has barely started. It will take a year, probably more, to do this investigation.
And what you're saying, Ms. Chavo, then, is that from what we know and from all the crashes that you've seen in the past, this preliminary report does not point to deliberate pilot action, but does very much point to the possibility of technical or mechanical failure?
Well, yes, and preliminary reports do not. That's the whole point of a preliminary report. There are standards, international standards, as to what you're supposed to do in safety. It's called a safety investigation, because you investigate so it doesn't ever happen again. And in the preliminary report, you're only supposed to put out at 30 days what you know, what the facts are. Now, I think they would have been aided in their cause of putting out only the facts had they put out the transcript, a transcribed version of the cockpit voice record, rather than summarizing. I think that's where the trouble lies here. But this report makes no recommendations. It makes no finding of fact, makes no finding of cause. And they're not supposed to. The preliminary report is not supposed to do that because they have the whole investigation ahead of them. This investigation will be thousands of pages long. The docket alone, that's when they publish all the evidence that they have gathered, it will be, it could be 1,000,000 pages. This investigation is so big and so important because, an aircraft is a flying computer. There are 1,000,000 lines of code or more on this aircraft. And because we know the aircraft can shut off the fuel by itself without the pilots touching it, because it's happened before, the investigators will go through all of that. They will not fail to look at the aircraft, the lines of code, the flight control operation by the plane and by the pilots. They will have, when this is over, they will look at all this, but there is no blame, there is no cause, there are no recommendations in the preliminary report, and there are not supposed to be those things in the preliminary report. That's not the purpose of a preliminary report.
Flight 171, Ms. Chavo, was in the air, as you of course know, for 32 seconds. Do you think that the preliminary report could and should have had a full transcript of what was said in the cockpit rather than just, paraphrase one scrap of conversation?
Well, so what usually happens is you do the transcript, and it's actually a written transcript. In the U.S., you cannot release the actual audio recordings. Yeah. But usually what happens is the investigators then post that transcript on the official investigation website that's in what's called the docket, so that people can see it for themselves. I do think they didn't do themselves any favors by paraphrasing and putting that in, but there's certainly nothing illegal or wrong with them doing that. And the transcript is also subject to interpretation. When you do an investigation, you have a team of experts listening to that cockpit voice recorder over and over again, listening for inflections, listening for other sounds, the sound of a click, the sound of a movement. And so it could be that the transcript is not ready yet. And that is certainly understandable. This is a very important transcript.
You've had all of this rich experience in aviation safety and litigation, Ms. Chavo. What does the coverage of this crash tell you on the aspect of the angle that this was pilot suicide or deliberate action? What does that tell you?
Well, saying what it may have been, if you include obviously the aircraft, other issues, many things. For example, people have coverage has said, well, that they looked at the fuel. Obviously there were other possible causes and they aren't done looking at. They did note that they took samples of the fuel and it was not fouled, meaning it wasn't bad fuel. Yeah. There are other things. For example, they'll be looking at whether the engines had vapor lock. There are situations where the engines themselves, the fuel gets blocked. There are hundreds of things it could have been, but because of this paraphrasing, I think people have jumped to the conclusion at this point with the evidence that we see, or rather that we don't see. How do you prove a negative that something did not happen? there's just no reason to jump to the conclusion that people are. And it can hurt the investigation. It's a well-known problem in investigation. It's called investigation bias, where you jump to the conclusion first, and then you try to make the facts match your conclusion. And many of investigation has gone afoul by trying to prove what you want the investigation to say rather than where the facts lead you. But I have no doubt that the AAIB will do this over the coming months and perhaps years, because this is a worldwide important investigation. It has ramifications literally for flight around the globe.
My final question to you, Ms. Chavo, is on the issue of vested interests. A large part of your work, has revealed this aspect of aviation accident investigations, vested interests, the big players, those who stand to gain from certain angles and certain agendas or certain narratives. Do you see that here as well?
Well, yes, in every investigation, remember the parties to the investigation, the official investigation, are those who have an interest in the outcome. Strangely, however, they never include the families of the passengers.
Yeah.
But, for example, the airline, the pilots union, Boeing, the engine manufacturers, General Electric of Cincinnati, Ohio, governments, by the way, the makers and contractors for the electronics in the plane, they are all, quote, parties to the investigation because they have an interest in the outcome. And obviously they can also have a huge financial interest in the outcome. But, trying to skew the investigation can also lead you into great trouble. For example, if you speak out of turn and make public statements and you're part of the investigation, you can be excluded from the investigation. The rules allow the AAIB to do that.
Yeah.
You mouth off in the press, part of the investigation, you're out. And also, if you mislead, for example, right now in the United States of America, Boeing is facing criminal, not civil, criminal charges in the United States District Court for the District of Texas in Dallas-Fort Worth because they misled and made false statements, allegedly. The plea hasn't gone through yet, to the United States Federal Aviation Administration. So you better not mislead the government, because in the United States, it can lead you to a criminal charge. And I think that was a sobering mood that had to happen because of the 737 MAX 8 crashes. And that weighs heavily on everyone's mind, hopefully, at Boeing.
Mary Chavo, thanks very much for speaking to NDTV. Like you said, the preliminary report was 15 pages long. The final report is potentially going to be thousands of pages long. And we will wait for that and hope to have another more detailed conversation with you. But thank you very much for your words and your time here on NDTV.
Thank you.
And to talk about what the Wall Street Journal has now reported, we're joined live by Captain Sam Thomas, President of the Airline Pilots Association of India, which has made multiple representations on not just the preliminary report, but also on some of this reporting. Captain Ehsan Khalid is an aviation expert, instructor, and a veteran Air Force pilot. And Sanjay Lazar is an aviation expert and someone who has represented families having lost his own in a terrorist bombing of the Kanishka Air India flight in '85. Thanks all of you for being with me. Captain Thomas, your first words on that Wall Street Journal article that appeared on the front pages today. We've told our viewers what's in it, what it has said about the pilots, what it has said about the conversation. Your views, sir.
Yeah, firstly, why we are upset about the whole situation is because we were objecting on two verticals. One is speculation, and the other is the absence of any qualified expert in this AAIB report. Now, as far as the speculation is concerned, we are okay with the media or the journalists speculating. We believe that speculation is a good part of investigative journalism. However, we object to the pilots or so-called experts who came on board and were speculating. On day one, they said it's a bird hit. On day two, they said it's an overloaded airplane. Day three, they said something else. What we are objecting to the media is, why did you call him on day 4? You called him on day 5, 6, till such time that he insinuated that this is something that the captain has done with a motive to end his own life, which is farthest from the truth, and you should not have said something like that. Now, as far as the report is concerned, we don't believe that this is completely Indian controlled. We put it to you that this is a dictated sort of letter which you have not even bothered to sign, and you have released that in the middle of the night. You cannot even get the full form of FADEC correctly, and you cannot get the issue date of Sumit's license correct. How do I expect you to go through the entire report? I don't want to see past those 3 lines. And you have released selectively at the order of somebody. 1 line. Now we don't know who said to whom, and there is a tonality to a conversation. These are not 2 people on a Tinder date. So please be responsible. And that is what we are objecting to. Use subject matter experts, use the ATC officers, use cabin crew, use 787 actively flying pilots. Take us as observers. We'd like to go through the entire report or the DFDR data, and we can throw better light on you rather than using somebody who's non-technical and from a non-civilian background.
Captain Thomas, the Wall Street Journal specifies, quoting unnamed officials, that it was Clive Kunder, the co-pilot, who was the pilot flying, and he expressed shock, confusion, panic, and that Captain Sabharwal was calm. And the insinuation there is that it was Captain Sabharwal, they say, attributing to unknown officials, who pulled those 2 switches to the cutoff position. That's what the Wall Street Journal is saying.
Yeah, they've been fed that information, and it's our fault. It's not their fault. If I were to be heading this committee, I would have sat there, given a piece of paper to each of those NTSB and Boeing and the English investigators, and said, sign this. Whatever goes out of this room goes out through me and not through anybody else. If you cannot maintain that confidentiality, get out from here. Wait for me to complete the investigation, and I will give you the report. You can do what you want. Now, by including them selectively, now you've set a narrative. You've set the narrative in such a calculated manner that no matter what proof I give you, you will still nail me, the pilot. You have already done that. Half the world thinks that, and half the world thinks that Indian pilots are morons. This has happened because of the shoddy investigation and the shoddy way things have proceeded in India.
Who do you think is gaining from this narrative, Captain Thomas? You're saying this information has been fed to the Wall Street Journal, and at NDTV we agree that you can't shoot the messenger. The Wall Street Journal has reported this information. Whatever their motives may be, we don't want to question that. But who are the vested interests you're seeing behind the scenes here?
No, this happens not just in India. It happens the world over. If Sully were to be dead, this report would never have come out of his innocence. Now, with the 737 MAX crash, what about the first crash? If you had woken up at that time and had a conscience, you would have said, hey, I need something to set my airplane all right. You kept quiet. Unfortunately, the Ethiopian accident happened. Luckily, the Ethiopians were much more intelligent than all of us. They did their in-house investigation, and that's when it came out that you could not avoid the existence of MCAS, which is a renegade system that crashes your airplane. So there are many vested interests, not just one. Let's not just look at the OEM or some investigating body. Everybody who is not telling the truth has something to gain. And this is the narrative that is being set. And we will object to anything without substantial proof if you nail the pilot. Please look at your airplanes. Please look at your personnel. Look at everybody else. Then if there is an issue of pilot error, we are willing to accept that, but substantiate it with proof. Otherwise, go home.
What is the DGCA saying to you, Captain Thomas? You've met them, I imagine, on more than one occasion. The system is listening to the multiple representations you've made and the concerns you've put forward. What are they saying to you?
The DG is a fine gentleman. He didn't even know that we were not being involved in this. He assumed that we were a part of this anyway, as is the case in many of those civilized societies. So the AAIB does not come under the DGCA technically.
Yeah.
It's under the Home Ministry and supposed to be independent. How can you be independent when you are under the Home Ministry, where every of your reports are being corrected and rewritten by somebody? So they welcomed our inputs, and they have granted us a status of subject matter experts and stakeholders. Therefore, the DG was very kind enough to say that, hey, anything regarding airplanes, even in future, would involve your association, that's the Airline Pilots Association of India, and we are very thankful to him for that. Unfortunately, the logistical and regulatory framework does not allow us to jump into AAIB right away. Therefore, Captain Randhawa of the Federation of Indian Pilots has asked for reconstitution of this committee and, if need be, a change and a legal oversight. That's what we are sticking to.
A judicial probe is the other phrase that has been used by some. Sanjay Lazar, who needs no introduction, has also been asking for that from the very beginning. A reconstitution of the probe panel, legal oversight, judicial probe. Sanjay Lazar, could those things even happen right now?
Absolutely, Shiv. Thank you very much for having me on the show, and good evening to my other guests on the show. First of all, this Wall Street Journal report is rubbish. It's shoddy. It's crap. The preliminary report also, let me say, is crap, and there's so many holes in it. It's like Swiss cheese, and it shames me that we are such a banana republic. We are the third largest aviation market in the world, the fourth largest economy, and this is the kind of report that our independent aviation investigation accident bureau comes out with. It's ridiculous. Let's, this needs to be thrown in the bin. The CVR was not even disclosed. You look at the kind of, neglect in the report itself. No timestamps. There are on the CCTV video, there is no timestamp. There are no, there's so much of significant audio that has been left out, and they themselves admit in the report at page 12 that they have 49 hours of DFDR and 2 hours of CVR of even previous flights. Why didn't you release this 34 seconds? Why did you leave the world to speculate? And of course, I know perhaps the NDA was signed by NTSB or whoever, but how have they gone and leaked it to third parties? What was, and that too 4 days in advance. Remember, John Ostrover had it last Tuesday, and he'd started the leak. So, absolutely ridiculous. I am completely in favor of moving a high court and getting a judicial probe. This AAIB can continue what it wants to do, but there has to be subpoenas. There's not a 787 pilot on the committee. There's not a pilot. There's not an engineer who's trained on the 787. What kind of a report are you doing? You look at some of the facts they've put forth, ridiculous. And what is our government doing? So, Shiv, we've had, the minister came out to say, I support pilots and cabin crew, and that's when he saw the storm of public opinion, and all the news channels on that Saturday. But let's understand, we've dropped the ball on this. And we've made Sumit and late Sumit and Clyde take the hit for this. Absolutely unforgivable, according to me. No CVR, no timestamps. And what about considering, we talk about the 2018 FAA, the 2015/25 CAA. What about the 2022 Boeing and FAA document on the fire switches, which say that FOD would disengage this? What about the ANI case? And I know you've had Mary Chavo also. She's given reports and reports, so many things. There are also EEC faults which could jam the TCMA, which do result in uncommanded activation of the engine fuel shutoff. Why are we leaving all this to chance? Our AAIB has really done a very shoddy job. And I think it's high time, some legal entity steps in and takes charge of this, where they can subpoena people. I'm very sorry to be so harsh, but I think it's about the basic that we need to do.
Captain Thomas, those who go against what you're saying, would maybe suggest that that you're not keeping an open mind. Why isn't the possibility of deliberate pilot action, in your purview? Let the probe complete itself. How would you answer that question, sir? There are those who will attack you, and I'm sure you've been attacked in the last few days, who will say that yours is an emotional argument. As a pilot, you feel a responsibility to defend the reputations of pilots, and therefore you're coming from a place of emotion and not from technical facts. What would you say to that?
Firstly, you show me the technical fact by which you are saying that Sumit is at fault.
Yeah.
And secondly, emotional or not, all Indians are emotional. It is my solemn duty to protect my pilots. What I'm saying is, what charge am I not being open? All I'm telling you is go through the entire list, be transparent. If it's a pilot error, it's a pilot error. It's not going to be the first pilot error in the history of aviation. If it's going to be something more sinister, let it be out. Why did you insinuate the whole thing? And is the first thing that you're going to do pilot error? And that also, what is it to substantiate that? Who said to whom about these fuel cutoff switches? And if I give you a scenario of on liftoff after 2.5 seconds, you have seen loss of thrust on both engines. My checklist calls for fuel cutoff switches to cut off and then to run, press and hold the rat for 1 second. What if I had done that? Now by releasing that one line and no timestamp, I don't know what has happened. I also believe that there's another theory, and I can go with that. This air crash investigation is not about your theory, my emotion, and my technical incompetence. No. There is no word like it could have happened like this, it should have happened like this, maybe this happened, so-and-so said to somebody. No, it is purely on facts, on data. And whatever you say, you have to prove. Whatever I say, I will prove. At this time, I challenge you, I dare you, you have no data to prove that Sumit made that mistake, let alone blame him for this entire murder, homicide, and all those fancy terms. So go through the entire with transparency, go to the entire data with transparency, come out with it, we'll accept it. We will accept it. If it's a pilot error, it's a pilot error. You have no choice but to accept it. But prove it. Don't insinuate the pilots.
The Indian government, one of the AI crash investigators' formal comment that we've gotten on the Wall Street Journal article, and I wanted your comment, all of your comments. Captain Khalid, appreciate your patience. I will come to you in a moment. They've said there's an appeal to the foreign media calling these reports irresponsible. The probe team has slammed these media reports, called them unverified, too early to reach such conclusions. This is amidst this entire pilot suicide theory. So there appears to be a kind of rebuttal or a rejoinder to the Wall Street Journal article in some form by one or all of the members of the AI crash investigation team. How would you, is it too late? Would you respond? What would you say to that, Captain Thomas?
Too little, too late. And I was speaking to BBC, and while I was trying to tell them that this is not the case, they said, hey, listen, we are not quoting our sources, we are quoting your sources. It's your friend in India who, very renowned pilot in India, who should have been an astronaut. Unfortunately, he was not, but he gave the statement that it's so they're quoting him. So shame on me, shame on the entire Indian pilot community, and shame on the media for carrying such irresponsible report. So too little, too late. I'm sorry.
Captain Khalid, very quickly coming to you. You've heard the investigators call the Wall Street Journal article irresponsible, jumping to conclusions, that there is nothing of that kind that is out in the preliminary report. What would you say to that?
Okay, first of all, let me tell you that I'm really appreciative of Captain Sam Thomas as ALPA representative, that I can truly believe that, should something wrong happen to me or any other pilot, there is someone who will be fighting.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Because, either this entire inquiry should have been confidential or it should be open. It should not be selectively open. It should not be selectively leaked out and yet kept confidential from me and Captain Thomas. Wall Street Journal had the AAIB report, preliminary report, everything line by line, 48 hours before it even was put on their website. Even then, it was not dated and it is not shipped. You wouldn't know whether it is 11th or 12th. What is the date of AAIB report?
Correct.
Is it 11th or is it 12th?
It's on the 12th morning, early in the morning at midnight.
You can correct yourself. You can correct yourself because FAA directive states AIB report as on 11th of July. That is the kind of, it is not a report that Alpa can actually go to the court and put it because it has no date, no reference number, no signature. That is one.
Yeah.
Number two, it is nobody's case that the dead pilots are putting excessive amount of pressure to the AIB and to the government and their economic interest and business interest to keep the CVR secret. Is it anybody's case? It is not the case. So, whose pressure is it, despite everybody asking that let everything come out in open? Because anyway it is in the open for Wall Street Journal and New York Times. Why it is not open for you?
Yeah.
Why do you have to now ask me? Yes, like Captain Sam Thomas said, that, maybe, every one of us is interested in finding out the truth, right? If the truth is that the pilots made an error, we would learn and we would have a better procedures tomorrow, right? If the truth is that the pilot committed suicide, show it by the data with 2,000 parameters in the DFDR.
Yes.
And 4 channels of CVR. If you can't reconstruct every event of that flight, then why did we have all these things to start with? Okay, if you can't read it, like Sam Thomas says, there's not even a single pilot who is 787 qualified or not, or engineer qualified, even I am not. Okay, but I understand if you stay in cockpit for 40 years, there couldn't be anyone more who would know what aviation is all about. Okay, so, but you need to have people who have worked on 787 for last maybe 15 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
They would tell that this is the problem, right? There is who on the AIB can tell you what is the procedure of releasing the aircraft under MEL if the post transducer has been faulty? Is there anyone who can say that? Or who has released the aircraft? It's a technical statement, but you won't know it. Sam knows it.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So we want to find out faults if it is in us. In us means the pilot community, but we are not a community. We are individuals. Individuals can make an error. If it is an honest error, it is the biggest service that we can do to the departed soul. That fine, any one of us can do mistake. You did it, and it was not intentional. You see the medias, no matter how much I talk on this or on 10 different channels, we will get maybe 40,000 views.
Yeah.
There is a guy like Stevie, Captain Stevie, 5 million views. On what? Murder plot. What murder plot is he talking about? Does he have the CVR? If there is not a murder plot tomorrow,
I understand.
Will he get 15 million times say sorry to the entire family and the people?
No, people will move on. But I hear what you're saying, Captain Khalid. And I wanted to say that the comments coming in from the AAIB, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, is a full statement that we've been putting out here on NDTV for the last couple of hours. And it's a 4-paragraph statement where it says the AAIB, and I want to just read out some excerpts and I'll get reactions from all 3 of you. It is essential to respect the sensitivity of the loss faced by family members of deceased passengers, crew of the aircraft, and other deceased persons on the ground. It has come to our attention that certain sections of the international media are repeatedly attempting to draw conclusions through selective and unverified reporting. Such actions are irresponsible, especially while the investigation remains ongoing. We urge both the public and the media to refrain from spreading premature narratives that risk undermining the integrity of the investigative process.
With 30 million views, the damage has already been done.
The last paragraph, Sanjay Lazar, I'll come to you, then I'll go to Captain Thomas. Sanjay, they say, the AAIB appeals to all concerned to await publication of final investigation report after completion of the investigation. AAIB will also publish updates as and when required, which have technical and public interest. Technical and public interest. Sanjay, what do you say to that? There seems to be urgent damage control because they've looked really bad.
It's nonsensical. Okay, they have woken up. If you go back to John's first post, it's on the 9th of this month. Today is the 17th. It's 8 days, 8 full days. like Captain was pointing out, 30 million views later, you're talking about this. I'm saying not 30, they're 300 million, because there are 10 or 15 of these jokers out in the market who've been talking rubbish. You asked Captain Sam Thomas a question, who benefited? I don't know if I did an op-ed for the NDTV today.
Yeah.
And if you read it, I have pointed out to the Dow Jones index. If you look at the share price of the Boeing, the day the accident took place, it was flatlined at $203. Do you know what it is today? $230. It's gone up 13% after the release of the report. That one sentence in the report has given it a 13% rise, $27 rise. That is for Boeing. It tells you what's going on here, Shiv. There is corporate America, there is big corporates who are at play here, and they're maligning a poor guy who's dead. I have flown with him on the Airbus, so I know him, and I'll tell you, it's hurtful to all the families, not only to his family, the first officer's family, the cabin crew, everybody, the passengers' families. And what is the government doing? I mean, they've kept quiet for all these 8-9 days. It's been there's been a storm on social media. Nobody's talking. I'm sorry. I really still strongly in my heart believe you need a judicial probe. Let these guys do what they're doing. If they want to rejig the committee, let them do it. But there should be a judge or a retired judge or a high court judge who is observing the nonsense that these guys are doing and ensuring complete transparency. They are going to be their own judges here. When he puts out that we will give technical and factual reports from time to time if necessary, they are going to be their own judges. No, they've lost their chance. The baby has gone out with the bathwater. I'm sorry. It's too little, too late.
Captain Thomas, too little, too late. The damage has been done. 30 million views, 300 million views, and then you have this one-page, beautifully formatted 4-paragraph statement from the AAIB. Has this ship sailed? Has the ship of credibility already sailed as far as this investigation is concerned?
Yes, I'm sorry to be very harshly speaking. I'm normally not a harsh speaking person, but where was your sensitivity when you had to release that 15-page report? Now you want me to be sensitive after my friend is thrown under the bus because of your stupid reporting. And yes, I agree that there needs judicial oversight, and these kind of, you're doing more damage by coming out with these insensitive reports, and now coming out to say that the public needs to maintain restraint. Firstly, you need to maintain restraint. You need to know at least how to take care of a report that happened in your room. If you can't take that, then I'm sorry, I don't know how you're going to take this report forward. And you set the narrative already. You set the narrative for my friend, and now you are going round and round in circles, dancing to the tune of the Western media, and you have branded him as a murderer. You had no right to do that, and you have done it prematurely. That's even worse. See what goes on through the minds of family. And please, what about the cabin crew? Did anybody speak about those cabin crew? Do you know what goes into a mind of an air traffic controller under whose watch a crash happens? The PTSD there is also severe.
Yeah.
Okay, so we must be sensitive to them as well, and do not release such horrendous reports. If you don't know your job, you're free to go home. This is a country of 1.4 billion people. We have experts. In one city of Bangalore that I am from, I will give you more experts than what you can combine and put from wherever you got them. So please you first be sensitive before you ask me to be sensitive.
Can this be fixed? Final question, Captain Thomas, and if I have time, I'll get the other two gentlemen in. Can this still be fixed? Is there time to fix it?
Now it's incumbent on the media. We have only source we have is the media. You please help us fix it, because it's a narrative game. Like Mr. Laza had said, it's 1 billion, 2 billion views, or 30,000 views, or whatever views there. I'm from an older generation. This view and social media validation is not required for me. So I come from a different, or rather, and say Khalid sir would be in that bracket as well. So we don't need validation by social media, and we expect the media, particularly big media houses, to come forward and ensure that in the interest of public safety, a fair investigation by qualified personnel be carried out, even if it is pilot error, be that as it may, we are willing to accept it, substantiate it with proof, please.
Sanjay Lazar, final words from you.
My final word is, let them conduct what they're doing. Only a judicial probe will ensure that there is no skullduggery anymore, because everybody is answerable to the law in this country. And that's what I strongly believe in it. And I've always been an advocate for the courts. So that's my thought. Also, I want to point out here just quickly, I hope those DGCA and the airlines that delayed the FDTL of the pilots for 2 years and asked for extensions will keep this in mind when it comes to pilot fatigue and cabin crew fatigue and rest period and mental state. It may be out of place for me to say it, but I know others won't. I want to say it. I just wanted to put that out. Yeah.
Okay. Captain Khalid?
Okay.
Yeah. Final word to you.
All right. So I like all pilots, I am member of at least 5 or 6 pilot group coming 20 years from the Air Force and 20 years in the civil flying. About say 4,000, 5,000 pilot groups. Combined, I can tell you today, the pilots would not believe anything that is now released to supplement what AAIB has said in the world of AI, of voice and video. The general perception is that it has been withheld because the things don't match. It will be released when things match. Unfortunately, that is the credibility. Forget the foreign media. Forget everyone. We are talking about people who are well-intentioned professionals within India. They would now not believe most of the things that will now come out, because it will only go on to supplement what has been already projected.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
That is unfortunate.
That is a sober reality, but ultimately the investigation must happen. I take your point, Captain Thomas. I know the media has a very important role to play, and I can speak on behalf of NDTV when I say we will not be shifting the spotlight from this. That's the reason that we've brought the three of you on to discuss it on a day when the AAIB has spoken only for the second time after the release of this report. It's ironic, but it is what it is, and we will continue to shine the light on this. Thank you, Captain Thomas, Sanjay Lazar, and Captain Khalid for being with me here on India Matters. Thank you.
Thank you.